Hello, welcome to Beauty in the Brains. If you are new here, then thanks for stopping by. I talk about horror books while I do my makeup. Make sure to like and subscribe and check out my other videos. There's quite a few of them by now and they're pretty good. They're all right. I mean, I'm new to this, so it is what it is. I'm by no means a makeup artist, so if you're like, you're not doing the foundation right, then I really don't care. If you like books, but you don't like makeup, stick around. If you don't like books, but you do like makeup, then also stick around. It's a win-win. Today, I am talking about, oh, that's strong coffee. Edgar Allan Poe. He was born in Boston, Massachusetts, in 1809. And he died in Baltimore, Maryland, a much easier state and name to pronounce than Massachusetts, in 1849. He was much more than just a poet. He was also an editor as well as a literary critic, but he is best known for his poetry and his short stories. Now, we need some clarification because many group Poe into the horror genre, into the gothic genre. I also did that for a very long time. You know, it was like a no-brainer. However, he is a romanticist genre writer, especially when it comes to American romanticism. He is also known for contributing to the popularity of the short story, because before there was like these huge doorstopper novels, like Count of Monte Cristo kind of novels. So anyone who is like shocked over me saying that Poe is a romanticist writer and not a gothic writer, I'm sure that there are some stories that literary historians do group into the horror genre and into the gothic genre. However, his work as a whole, an omnibus of Edgar Allan Poe stories, it is in the romanticist genre. Romanticist literature in America at this time really leaned towards the macabre, like Romeo and Juliet style kind of stuff. Romance was only good if someone was getting stabbed to death. Edgar. He had an unfortunate life. I feel like everyone I talk about on this channel has an unfortunate life. But did you really expect someone who wrote this kind of material had a life of like candy sweetness? No. How could you? I'm not saying that in order to be a good horror writer, you have to be screwed up in the head, but it usually is that way. He was abandoned by his father. I don't know who his father was. I don't even think he knew who his father was. Like abandoned, the poor thing. And his mother died when he was really young, so he was quickly orphaned. He was semi-adopted by a couple named John and Frances Allan. I do think that his like real family last name was Poe. It was kind of unclear, and by halfway adopted, I don't really know what that means. I'm guessing it was just like the societal idea of what is today's foster care. But he stayed with them until his adulthood. But they did not get along well once Edgar was going into higher education due to money problems. So Edgar, he was always a social outcast and he didn't like society. It's like one of those social outcasts where it's not that they are just a little bit weird or awkward. It's like, no, they just don't want to be a part of any of it, which is fine. A lot of writers are like that. That's why we get the good content that we get. So he had to get a job. And of course, he found something to do with writing. His earliest writing work was when he was enrolled in the US military, because not only did he have to get a job, but I mean, they couldn't really pay for his higher education, and so the only kind of higher education he could get was through the US military. So his writings were under a collection, and it was named Tamerlane and Other Poems. He wasn't credited with his real name, Edgar Allan Poe. He was only identified as a Bostonian. He liked his new profession. He was quite a rascal when it came to military school. He hated military school is what I'm trying to tell you. And now I think that this is a rumor, but even if it is a rumor, I freaking love this story. The legend says that when Edgar Allan Poe was in military school and he was getting ready to graduate with his class, they were having some trouble deciding on whether or not to wear certain kinds of ceremonial like weaponry on their person, like pistol and a sword. And whatever they're called, like the general or whatever, the lieutenant, I don't know, someone came in and told all the boys who were graduating, hey, only wear the sword. And little mischievous little Edgar over here walked out into the ceremonial hall, bare ass naked, only wearing his sword. Because that's what the guy said. He said, only wear your swords. And apparently the rumor also says that he wasn't given his diploma because of this outrage of him being naked in front of probably hundreds of people. Now, what I'm about to say next might kind of tick some people off. Just hang in there. I guess my only caution is remember the times. This was a pretty long time ago. All right, I'm just gonna say it. He married his 13-year-old cousin. He did it, yeah. But it was really common back then. Like, every day this happened. Kind of common. Every day people were marrying their cousins. It was... So she was 13, he was 27. Historians say that the marriage was most likely just for monetary reasons. They also say that their intimate relationship was most likely not sexual. That's what they say. Why? You know, I mean, they never had children, but maybe there's, you know, something wrong with either both or one of their fertility issues. How are we to know? We might never know. Their relationship only lasted for 11 years because she died of tuberculosis. They were together a long time, considering things. Wait, so how old was she? 13 plus 11. 24. Ah! I'm gonna be 24. Damn. Edgar had a biographer. Like, he chose a biographer before he passed. This was something quite prestigious that many writers would do back in these times, even if you weren't really all that popular. Like, it was just something you had to do. You had to get a biographer on your deathbed, and you had to just, you know, that way you could die knowing that someone's going to read about your life. His biographer stated that Edgar didn't need women the way that, and I quote, in the way that normal men need them. You thinking what I'm thinking? The way that normal men need them. Now, let's think about the time. What could that possibly mean? What is a normal man in these times in America? Well, what sadly many would say today, heterosexual. I'm not saying that that's what I think is normal. I don't know what is normal. I mean, freaking look at me. I'm freaking nuts. But historically speaking, I think that's pretty much what the biographer is getting at. But I'm not going to make any claims because there's no history to back any of this up. It's just the word of the biographer. And we could have easily taken it out of context or just misconstrued. You know what I'm saying? He was most likely gay or possibly even bi, but there's no way to know for certain. And it is up to no one to make that decision for him hundreds of years after his death. I have a problem with people who tried to integrate him into gay history because we need to understand that even if he was gay, that if he were to be public about that in his lifetime, he would have either been killed or put in prison and then killed in prison. On top of that, he was just a very strange man, and who knows what his sexual life was like. For all we know, maybe he wasn't queer at all. Maybe he was just asexual. It's just a big guessing game. Poor Edgar. Never, I mean, but I think that gives more mystery to him, honestly, and it makes me love him even more. Another thing that no one knows, this video is just full of just missing information. No one knows really how he died. Oh, apparently, he loved his cousin, and they got along great, but all of his friends and other family members said that they weren't like other cousins that got married, as in that they clearly did not show any kind of signs of intimacy or of a relationship beyond that of like a brotherly sister relationship. It's just disturbing to me because his family members were like sitting in the reading room or whatever, and they're like watching Edgar and his cousin interact, and they're like, why is he not screwing his cousin? That's weird. Like, today, like, that sentence to us today is like wild, freaking wild, but back then it was a serious topic. Anyway, I got off track. How did he die? We don't know. It could be anything, many possibilities, such as disease, any old disease, alcoholism, or substance abuse, or suicide. I didn't start reading his works until middle school. I used to have this edition of his complete works, but I let a friend borrow it in high school and he never gave it back. So yeah, I have read all of his works, like, entirely, and that is why I'm such a fan. But even if you just read a couple of his works, you're gonna fall in love. If you like that kind of genre, if you like horror, how could you not like Edgar Allan Poe? I cannot possibly mention all of his works or all of his stories, so I'm just going to focus on the most popular ones, The Pit and the Pendulum. This story ended up being the most profound to me because it is about the Spanish Inquisition, which happens to be a personal thing on my mother's side of the family. Many remember the Spanish Inquisition as witch hunters, but what is often left out of the narrative is how many of those witches happened to be Jewish people. The Inquisition did not start out by persecuting the Jews, but it very quickly went down that road, trust me. You see, the organizer and the leader of the Inquisition was a Jewish man who willingly converted to Catholicism because he was already like a member of the Spanish court, and he had this huge major crush on the Spanish queen, who was like uber Catholic, and he wanted to like just impress her, and he was like, oh look, I'm not Jewish anymore, even though you always remain being Jewish, even though, anyway. To prove his love to her, he just dedicated himself to targeting Jewish people. Even though on the books, the Spanish Inquisition was not about that. The Spanish Inquisition was very much just like a mass conversion to Catholicism. Either that or get the heck out of here. I have no idea what it was probably like for my family members if they willingly converted to like save themselves from being burned on the stake, or if some of them had to be burned on the stake to set an example to other ancestors of mine to mass convert. Like, I have no idea, because unlike Nazi Germany, they didn't write those things down usually. The majority of Jewish Spanish Inquisition stories that we have are historical fiction of learned historians who have studied the Inquisition to the point where they can try to make a scenario similar enough, they hope, that was similar to probably something that actually happened, but we just don't know. Very recently, like just a handful of years ago, if you have any evidence that your family was a victim of the Spanish Inquisition or a part of the Jewish expulsion of Spain in like the 1600s, then you will be given full Spanish and EU citizenship. But my problem with that is like, who has family documents from the 16th century? Like, who? It's a little impossible, I think. So since I have no clue of any of that kind of suffering and peril, The Pit and the Pendulum by Edgar Allan Poe is the closest I can get to that understanding of my ancestry. The Black Cat. The Black Cat is beyond disturbing. You know those horror lovers who don't bat an eye at people's limbs getting ripped apart and their guts falling out of their body? Yeah, that's me. I'm also the kind of horror fan who, if any animal gets hurt along the process, I cry my eyes out. Like, I can't deal with it. The worst kind of horror movies, in my opinion, are ones that right off the bat hurt an animal or show an animal getting killed. And I'm like, why? Even though we know very well that they're not actually getting hurt. The Black Cat describes the violence that a substance abuser, in this case an alcoholic, can have towards the ones that they love, including their pets. So if you love animals like I do not suggest this story. I could barely even get through the whole thing, but it fascinated me because I've never read a horror story where I was so disgusted by it, so put off by it, that I considered putting it down. And I've read some pretty gnarly stuff, and now I know how so many people must feel when they read just normal horror stories. You know, people that just don't like horror, they can't mentally deal with horror, they put down horror books, or they walk up halfway through the movie and they can't finish it. And now I know what that feels like. It was amazing. So yeah, but if you don't want to go through that, just don't read the story. I'm not suggesting that anyone reads the story. If, yeah, okay, I warned you. you were warned. However, this has a great movie adaptation with Boris Karloff and Bela Lugosi, though it's not even half as difficult in terms of content or watching, and the plot of the movie is very loosely based on the novel, but it is brilliant. Murders in the Rue Morgue. This is your average mad scientist tale, and it's freaking great. I really don't know what else to say about it, besides just read it. At Last, The Telltale Heart. This story is all kinds of fucked up. Do you know what it's about? I'll tell you what it's about. Oh, Edgar Allan Poe. It is about this old man who has a cataract in one eye. So like his eye is a little bit foggy, right? And his nurse, or whatever he is, his caretaker, he is so creeped out by this man's cataract that he kills him. What? Only Edgar Allan Poe would be able to get away with writing a story like that. And it's only 4 pages long. And it's just a masterpiece. And I think that is the genius of Edgar Allan Poe, is he can make a 4-page story just be phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. I think that really is his contribution to the American short story, is not just the horror aspect, but when you are writing a short story, you obviously have a limited word count, and so every single word you choose really has to just be spot on perfect, and Edgar Allan Poe clearly had no problem with doing that. That's all I have to say about little Edgar baby, my favorite American Gothic, well, romanticist writer. I hope you liked this video. I hope you liked my makeup look. Do not forget to like and subscribe and to hit the notification bell. Just hit it, because I am going to be doing something a little different than what I have done so far. I am going to be making a makeup video and sharing ghost stories of my own. Yeah, like spooky things that I've experienced for myself, or at least I think I experienced. Who knows? I don't know. I don't know what happened, but I have quite a few of them, so stay tuned, and I will see you next week. Bye!